Brett Brown and this team have given the city a ton to cheer about, and tomorrow night it will be packed. Michael Lee covers the NBA for Yahoo Sports. He caught up with one Brett Brown and has a great piece at Yahoo on Brett Brown here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Appears like all guests via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
You got it. This is a team in this area that it's very polarizing. You were either on one side of the fence or you're on the other side of the fence. And people, even with the success of this team, are still battling about how they got here. But Brett Brown has been through it all, and you got a chance to really catch up with him. He told you, the goal was to be where they are. Now, maybe not a 50-win team, a 3 seed, but, did he have plans that this was their year to be in this position?
Yeah, the first words that came out of his mouth during training camp was, "We're going to the playoffs." And he told the guys that, and even though, at the time his best player was 23 and his second best player was 21, and neither one had played at even half of a season, he felt like this was the year that they were finally going to break through. He just felt that the main key was to keep Joel Embiid healthy, and if they could just build an offense around Embiid's dominance inside and Ben Simmons' speed, then they were going to have a great chance of being successful this year. Because if you think about it, they kind of had a style of play that they had formed where they were going to play hard, they were going to compete, they were going to get up and down the floor. They just didn't have the talent. But now when you have a system in place and you actually have talented pieces, you have shooters that can surround your elite talent, you have a chance to compete. And I think you're seeing it kind of come together. I don't know if anybody expected them, like I said, to be battling for home court advantage in the first round. But the way it's coming together, they have a chance to be good now and very scary down the road.
Now, he said to you, Michael, that he felt to have any other goal was borderline sort of cowardly. I think a lot of people, thought that this Sixers team had a chance to maybe be the 8 seed or the 7 seed. Like it was, they were getting to that point. But how surprised maybe is Brown that they are potentially a number 3 seed? And if you're in the top 3 historically in the NBA, the 1 seed wins the championship a majority of the time. The number 2 seed and the number 3 seed are about the only 3 seeds that have won championships. A 4 has won and a 6 has won one time respectively. But if you're not in that top 3, you're not really a legitimate contender. So how surprised is he that they could be in a position to be in the top 3?
I think he may have been surprised probably in October or September when they met for training camp. But I think that, since Christmas, they've had the second best record in the NBA, behind Houston. That's better than Golden State, better than Boston, better than Toronto, and better than everybody else. Houston's the only team that's had a better record than them since Christmas. So they've been trending in the right direction for a long time. And then when you look at just what's been happening on the defensive end, they're the best defensive team since Christmas. So I think when you have a great defensive team and you're winning games, it's going to be hard to bet against you. And I think he's pretty confident about what they can become because on the defensive end, they really bring it. And when they get out on the run, they're on the fast break, Ben Simmons can just, really crush you with his passes or just dunk on you. And then, the fact that they're winning right now without Joel Embiid, I think that's sort of what kind of got me off a little bit of surprise. But then they've also had a weaker schedule since then. But I think overall, they've been trending up this way for a while now. And then once the Brian Colangelo added, Marco Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova, after the All-Star break, that really got their bench stronger. So they're a different team than they were when they met for camp. And now they look like a team that can really make some noise in the postseason. If Embiid can come back and be healthy, of course.
Right. Michael, you talked about Embiid's absence. Is there a better coach out there served than Brett Brown to deal with that, though, because of the road that he's had to go through? It's like they haven't missed a beat.
He has such an optimistic, positive attitude. I had a chance to speak to Gregg Popovich about him, and, he was around him for 13 years in San Antonio, and one of the qualities that he always had was that he was always upbeat. Now, it's easy to be upbeat when you're winning 50 games every year and you compete for championships. It's a lot harder to do that when you're winning 10 games or having 26-game losing streaks or 17 games losing streaks to start the season. But he was always upbeat. He was always able to step front and answer questions about whatever horrible injury that's keeping somebody out for the season. So he's sort of maintained, this positive edge. So when Embiid went down, he said that, they basically took ownership. They took ownership and they wanted to protect what they had built. They didn't want to see it fall apart. And I think that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing J.J. Redick step up. I had I asked him about, what it was like to hear Brett Brown say they're going to the playoffs. And he said it was a bit of a relief for him because, when he first was signed, everyone's like, oh, they have a great locker room presence. He'll be able to help these young guys understand what it's about. And he didn't like that role because he came to play. He came to win. And to hear that the coach was determined to win, he said he feels like that sort of established the mindset that the team was going to have for the rest of the season. And you could just see they have a much greater professionalism as the year's going on. And they sort of expect this. Like it's like those of us who are from the outside and have seen how bad they looked the last couple of years, it may be a surprise to us, but inside that locker room, guys like Robert Covington and T.J. McConnell, those guys who've been around for a while, they look at this team and feel like they're where they're supposed to be.
You mentioned Gregg Popovich a little bit there, a decade that Brett Brown worked with Popovich and Coach Pop. What aspects of Pop's coaching do you think that Brett took from working with him? And I know it's not the media savvy since Brett actually does stand there and answer all our questions instead of disappearing.
I think one of the things he picked up from Pop is that, you got to instill confidence in your players. You got to make them believe. And if you look at, what the Spurs are doing right now without Kawhi Leonard, the fact that they're still in the playoff hunt and a lot of guys are playing above what you expect, that's because, Popovich instills that belief, he instills that confidence, and he's really big on relationships. He's really big on getting to know people and on a human level, and that's on a basketball level. And, Brett Brown was able to do that with these guys over the last couple of years, was really get to know them, spend time with them, watch film with them, and, when winning isn't necessarily the goal, you have to focus on other things. Player development was a big thing, and I think that you're seeing that now sort of come through where the players respond to him. They understand what he's asking of them, and every time they show that they can do something, he adds a little bit more.
What's your take on the Markelle Fultz situation and how he handled that? Because that was drama that continued, and now Markelle Fultz is back. Now, of course, he was involved in the Embiid injury, but Markelle Fultz and the way Brett Brown never really threw him under the bus. He just kind of patiently waited for that gentleman to return.
Yeah, I think one thing we could say about Markelle Fultz is, we have to be encouraged that his shoulder's okay because that's the shoulder that knocked out a 7'2", 280-pound man, and he's still up shooting the ball now. So I think we know his shoulder's okay. But I think that one thing is to incorporate a guy this late in the season when you have a good thing going. It is sort of a dangerous thing to do, but I think what he really wanted to do was to see just what Markelle Fultz has, and I think Brett Brown, the team, they all understood that Fultz really needs basketball. He's a 19-year-old kid who doesn't have anything else going for him, and being on the floor is going to help him, move forward. It's going to help him get behind whatever physical or mental issues sort of deprived him over the last couple of months. So he wanted to see what he could do, and you're starting to see some of the flashes that made them want to take him number one. He's played well. His shot's still a little bit off, but he's still able to get to the basket and be a wonderful playmaker. And I think you're starting to see that. And once his confidence gets back, he could wind up being, a bit of an X factor, this season, which I think going a few months ago, no one expected that he would even see the floor.
Yeah, and I guess one question is, Michael, at this stage of the season with, about 5 games left, do you like the way the Sixers are implementing him? And do you sense that Brett Brown almost feels like, man, I got this new toy, and it's like I just want to use it a little bit more each and every night?
Yeah, because he brings a different dynamic to this team. He brings something that they don't have. They don't have a small guard who can actually break down a defense. They don't have a guy who has a natural playmaking instinct. I think Ben Simmons is a guy who can find you if you're open and get you, a good look. Markelle Fultz is a guy that can create an open look for you. And I think that's the difference. They both have incredible vision. They both can make plays, but it's different when, a guy can draw the defense in and create space, whereas, you create the space and Ben finds you with a nice pass. So they both have different skill set, but Fultz is somebody that's unique in what he can give them. And, once he starts getting more confidence in his shot, he might be able to do a little bit more. But that's something that's going to be gradual and take a little time. But right now, I think you see that there's something there. And it'd be interesting to see what happens, when Joel gets back and what they're able to do together when they're on the floor together.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens when Joel comes back. Are you surprised, and is Brett surprised maybe, how well that they have gelled and played without Joel Embiid?
No, like I said earlier, they really took ownership of what they had built, and they played some really lousy teams. Let's be honest. I mean, when you play the Hawks and the Hornets and the Nets, the Pistons, it kind of makes it easier to play without your best player because you don't have to really have any challenges. I think going up against the Cavaliers would be a serious test to see exactly where they are without Joel Embiid. I think we all know that for the team to be what it's supposed to be and go as far as it should go, they're going to need that big fella down low, who just elevates everybody around him the minute he steps on the floor. He's such a unique player. But I think that the schedule has done a lot of wonders for him. And I think it helps, too, that the rest of this season, they have 4 games left, and they got Cleveland. That's the only real tough challenge. Then they got Atlanta and Dallas, which should be 2 wins, which probably you could chalk up a 50-win season for a team that won 38 games the last 2 years combined.
Right. And real quick on that, for them to win 50, there's a lot of people that would look at that and say, holy mackerel, they won 10 games 2 years ago. They won 50. Do you look at that as a bigger accomplishment than an ordinary team winning 50 games? Or is that just, hey, look, the league's got a lot of teams not trying to win, and they're a byproduct of that?
Well, I think when you got to think about it, last time the Philadelphia 76ers won 50 games, Allen Iverson was stepping over Tyronn Lue. So that's 18 years almost.
Long time.
That's what I said. The last time they won 50 games, Allen Iverson was stepping over Tyronn Lue in the NBA Finals. So that's 17 years ago. So that's a significant accomplishment for this franchise, not just this group right now. The 76ers have sort of been a kind of a middling team that could kind of get there as a 6th seed, maybe barely get in, squeak into the playoffs. But I think when you look at them and you see that now they're a 50-win team, now in their minds, they know that they're special. They know that they can be a team that has to be taken seriously, going forward, because you don't luck into 50 wins. You don't, that's something that you really earn. I mean, I lived in D.C. for 13 years. That franchise has not won 50 games since 1979. So some franchises would die just to have that opportunity to win 50 games. So the 76ers to do that with guys who are 24, 21 years old, I think that's pretty admirable.
Michael Lee's with us, covers the NBA for Yahoo Sports. And, Michael, you mentioned a couple of the free agent names that Colangelo brought in, Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova, and now J.J. Redick, all 3 of those guys shooting from beyond the arc. Which of those 2 guys that they brought in, Bellinelli and Ilyasova, do you think will make the biggest difference in the playoffs?
JJ, obviously, because he's been in the playoffs every year. He's been to the NBA Finals. I mean, he's played in big moments. So I think he's a big pickup. But I really love what they did with Bellinelli because, they need shooting. When Ben Simmons is an awesome player, but he's never made a three-pointer in his entire NBA career. So he might go through this whole season without ever making a three-pointer, which would be pretty remarkable because he could still end up with Rookie of the Year, have more triple-doubles than Magic Johnson had as a rookie, but never hit a 3, which is kind of crazy. But adding a Bellinelli, a guy who can spread the floor and can get hot. In the playoffs, you need guys who can get streaky and go on a run, and he's that type of player. Or say if the starters aren't rolling, he can come in and just hit a couple threes, get the crowd going. And so I think he might wind up being a bigger pickup just because they didn't have to give anything to get him, and he serves a purpose because a team with 2 inside guys, you need somebody who can spread the floor, and he does that well.
Hey, Michael, if they're starting, this is really the starting point for them, and if it starts at 50 wins, where do you see the ceiling for this team being, 3, 5, 7 years down the road?
Well, it depends on how well Markelle Fultz comes along. I think that he's the key. I mean, if he can come back and sort of regain his confidence and be, what they thought they drafted, he's a guy that can help, give them that extra push. I think that, the East is pretty wide open. I think that, Boston is going to be good for years to come. Obviously, if Kyrie Irving can return from his latest knee surgery. But I think it's going to be between them, Boston, and Milwaukee, probably in the future, depending on whatever LeBron does. But I just think that they're a team of the future. There's going to be a rivalry. That Celtics 76ers rivalry that we had in the 80s, that was so much fun. Dr. J punching the Larry Bird and all that stuff. Those days might be able to come back to life in a new way with two truly special players, and Ben and Joel, who could become some of the all-time greats at their position. And if you can add a Markelle Fultz and they can figure out how to play with each other, you could be a team that could own the East for a while, or at least duke it out with Boston for years to come.
Now, there are a lot of fans out there and NBA people who will kind of look at what the Sixers did and how they got here and feel that it's tainted a little bit. Does Brett, look back at that time at all and feel like, I don't like the way we got here, or I don't like, you know what I'm saying? Like, does he look back at that and kind of feel that, that they went about it the wrong way?
He felt like they were doing the right thing all along. I mean, he signed up for this rebuild and to get it all the way down to the bottom, strip it all the way down to nothing and start all over. I think that some people try to maybe make too much of what it was. I think that they went a little too far with it. I don't think that there's a right way to tank. I don't think that there's a better way to tank. I think that this was an ugly way to tank, and they were lucky, and that's really what it takes to win in this league. It takes a lot of luck. And the fact that Joel Embiid is healthy is because they were lucky, not because they lost a bunch of games. The fact that Ben Simmons is a once-in-a-generation player, yeah, they lucked into the number one pick, but there's no guarantee that if you win 10 games, you're going to get the top pick. Dallas didn't get it when it won 11 games. The Sixers didn't when they won 9 games a few years ago. So I just think that there's no guarantee that being awful is going to get you the top pick. They got lucky, and they're fortunate that the guys that they drafted turn out to be special, because other teams that drafted players in that same position and didn't wind up with somebody great, they just happen to have it timed perfectly.
That's a good point. And, Michael, when this was happening, and the Sixers were kind of doing their thing, and they were kind of the one team, and I at that time said, look, this isn't a Sixers problem. This is an NBA problem. Do you now think, and does Brett Brown and others feel like the NBA has a problem based on what the Sixers did and everybody else is kind of following suit now?
Well, this is the last year that you can tank in this fashion. This is the last year you can do it. So I think a lot of teams have bought in. They kind of conceded that it's Golden State. They're going to wind up repeating. So why even, engage? So next year the lottery system's going to change. The top team won't have an unfair advantage when it comes to the number of ping pong balls. The worst 4 teams are all going to be thrown in the same boat. So I think a lot of teams just realize that this is their last year to go for broke and just come up with creative ways to lose games. So obviously, building a D-League roster, which is what the 76ers did for a while. So I think that, teams are just trying to go for broke this last year, and then we'll see what happens going forward. But this is the last year I think you'll see 8, 9 teams decide to, purposely say, we've checked out of this year. Good luck.
How imperative is tomorrow night's game with Cleveland now to get that number 3 seed with what happened in Boston earlier today?
Yeah, it means the difference between a second-round series against Toronto, who's the number 1 seed, or against a depleted either Boston team or whoever they want to get in the first round. And I'd rather take my chances as a 3rd seed, especially if you're a young team and you're, getting your first taste of the playoffs. If you want to make a deep run, you might as well do what you can. And the best part of it all is if you get a 3 seed, you definitely avoid the Cavaliers to the conference finals. So I think the best thing to do is to try to move up if you can. And if you can't, it's all gravy. I mean, I think, like you said, people were expecting this team to be an 8 seed coming in, just get the experience of being in the playoffs, and if they got there, and that would be cool. They've obviously raised their expectations each step along the way. So however far they go, they've already, I think, exceeded expectations. So they're kind of playing with free money right now. They might as well go ahead and blow it.
Michael Lee, Mr. Michael Lee on Twitter, NBA senior writer, Yahoo Sports. Check out his article on Brett Brown and the Sixers, who play the Cavs tomorrow night right here on 97.3 ESPN. Michael, really, really good read, and appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.